Thank you so much to Ayanda and Elroy and also Mr. Simon, the legendary one. So right now, moving again to the new segment, we're discussing all things music. This one I'm very interested in because I'm not really clued up. And we are joined by an amazing panel, Mr. Tumsani, Munya, Wiseman, and Berita. So now I have so many questions than answers. Because I want to know, I'm new in the game, like literally, starting the whole music thing. It's too expensive, guys. It's very expensive. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Wiseman. You can lead us with a conversation.
Thank you, Buji. And welcome to, is it the Intellectual Property Law in Music and the Creative Industries Conference. So I'll be facilitating today, so there'll be less talk from me and more discussion from my esteemed panelists across the board here. I think the first part is just a quick intro. The name is Wiseman Ngubo. I currently look after the operations for an organization called Capaso. And on the side, I also moonlight as somebody who works in the copyright space, in the advocacy space. I work with the South African Copyright Coalition, which is an advocacy group really geared to try and ensure that the laws of the country and the laws of the continent, in essence, actually recognize the importance of copyright primarily for the people who create it. So, before we get into the discussion, I think it's great that we give a lay of the land. So we'll start with you, Tumsani. If you can just break it up for us a little bit. Exactly when we speak about copyright or intellectual property in the music space, what are we talking about in layman's terms?
All right. Thank you, Wise. As you've introduced me, my name is Tumsani Mutamai. I'm an entertainment lawyer and a director at Murolong Incorporated, which is an entertainment law advisory and law firm. I think within the entertainment and in particular the music space, it's always important that there's two types of copyrights that are pivotal. And the first is the one that we call a copyright in the composition, which basically governs what we call the musical work, which is basically what in loose language you normally call it the melody or the beat or the progression of the song, whichever way. Those that studied music are able to define it much more precisely. And there's also then the literary works, which is what we call the lyrics. So that a body of works becomes a copyright in itself. We call it the copyright in the composition. And that copyright then is the copyright that vests with whosoever composed the melody, whosoever wrote the lyrics. Sometimes it's the same person. Then there is a different copyright altogether, and that is the one that tends to make more news than the other one. And that's you hear everyone talk about master the master rights, That now is the copyright in the sound recording. Now that is basically now the copyright that vests with whosoever paid for the recording, whosoever either owned the studio or paid for the studio, paid for the producer, paid for the mixing and mastering, but the one who basically spent so that the recording is put into a material form. Usually that is the labels, the recording companies. So when a creative goes to the studio, Ngubo, those are the two main copyrights we insist are known to a creative and that at the back of the mind of the creative, because that is what then will decide how far whatever they go to do in the studio will go insofar as monetizing is concerned.
Thanks, man. I think that it's very clear. So we have the publishing and the recording rights.
Yes.
And as somebody who does both, Sisperita, I think I'll come to you now to just let us know exactly. You're an independent musician who makes a living out of both the music and the recording side of things. So why was it important for you to be to come across and handle your music independently and own the copyright in that music?
I think when I first started, like many artists do, I did not own the master rights. I started with the composition. Because the composition, it's like Putumsane Sisho. When you go to the studio, for me, I used to go to the studio with my guitar, just right here. You know, I would always come up with a song at home. So when I come up with a song at home, it's just a voice and a guitar. So I would know that already by the time I'm in a studio, I've got a composition. But when I get to the studio, sometimes I'll get there and perhaps maybe the song is not complete. Or maybe I've got a hook. And the hook is the most popular part that you hear in the song.
Yeah.
But in terms of the verses, I need some assistance. I need someone else to write with me.
Yeah.
So if someone then writes with me, writes a verse, or maybe they play an instrument and they say, okay, I see that when you're playing, you're going to this chord. It's nice, but how about we move it to this chord? So the moment someone alters the composition that you have, it means that now they are sharing that composition with you.
Sure.
That is the first part. Which is, what people don't understand is that sharing composition is not a difficult thing to do because we are creative.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll come up with something, sometimes you will come up with something.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's people that make a living solely by making just the music. They make the beats
Yes.
or they compose on the guitar. There are some people that make a living, it's very common internationally, just from writing the words of the music. And some of them, they sing the melodies on top. Those people are called top liners.
Yeah.
So all those people, when they come together, especially when you want your music to be monetized and to be heard by many people, then it means that you have to be collaborative. But when you collaborate in that space, it means now that you have to agree on who owns what part of the copyright. That's the composition. And then as time went on, I realized that for example, as Uputumsani said, whoever pays for the master rights owns it. When I first started, I didn't have the money to pay for the master right. And then as going forward, after I had built my reputation, I had now had the money, and I now decided that I want to also participate in the monetization of the master rights. So now I have to invest, I have to pay upfront. When I go into the studio, I hire the studio. If there's an engineer, I pay the engineer. Sometimes there's producers, and I pay them for the recording of the song. If a producer has worked on composing, it means that they will still earn a share as in the composition copyright, but they also need to be compensated for the master. Yeah.
Perfect. So I want to drill into the idea of saying you then had sort of an epiphany that you wanted to own the master, right?
Yeah.
So we often hear multiple stories around disputes between record labels and performing artists on that one aspect, which is the ownership of this master.
Yeah.
So ever since you've started handling your career yourself, what are some of the things that you've had to start thinking about that you didn't have to when you were signed to a label that was paying for all of this? Yeah.
I think that, at most times when you're an artist and you own your master, the most important key part is monetizing. Because it doesn't make sense to have a beautiful song that you have recorded that is sitting shelved somewhere that no one is hearing, or it's on Fagaza, or these sites. So I think the most important thing to understand, if you're going to put yourself in a position where you want to own the master, you now have to have further knowledge of how then, how do you get a quality master right? Number one, because if you're saying you want to own a master, you're saying you want to invest. If you want to invest, you're saying you want return on investment over a long period of time.
Business.
Because even owning your masters and marketing them is not cheap. And also, even if you can pay for it, it takes expertise.
Yeah.
I'll use an example with my music. When I recorded Tandolwetu, I owned the composition. I owned 50% of it because I wrote the song with someone else. I did not own the master right of that particular song when it first came out. When it comes to well, now I was able to go back to the record label and purchase it. So now I own that, but it it cost a lot of money, But it's because it was a quality recording. If 10 years ago I had gone and recorded Thando Lwethu myself, I didn't have the expertise to number one, make a quality recording that will be making the money for a very long time. So the investment, what young artists need to understand, especially if you're going to partner with some people that know how to manage master rights, is that there is also the knowledge and experience that you don't have. So it's not just about having the money.
But but now with the streets, with what's happening, that some of the songs get popular on the street and then it catches the hype.
Yeah.
So let me say you're not signed to anyone. I went to Fagaza, the song went big. So what happens with that then?
Yeah. So at least now we're in the digital era. The digital era has made things in terms of monetizing master rights much, much easier, because you don't need to be signed to a big record label. You can go, there are independent distributors, there are do-it-yourself, DIY distributors, where you pay maybe a fee, like DistroKid, TuneCore, if I may name them, and you upload your music and you get paid. At most times, it's almost 100% after, of course, their admin expenses. So in most cases, what's happening, I think, with young talent is that sometimes they will record. Recording in ECAS is not expensive because a lot of people have bedroom studios now. So in the bedroom studio, going back to the copyright, a master copyright is created by recording. Composition is created by writing that music, right? Now, a song, me and Pushia in the studio, kumnandi.
You lock down.
You lock down. Ukhona ne lock drum. Yakokoti piano. When we make a song, we don't know anything. We just take that song, maybe we start sending it to our friends on WhatsApp.
Yes.
Already at that point, it means that the copyright is spreading and it's not being monetized.
Okay.
And it has not been protected.
And it has not been protected. That's where even Munya will talk more about, because he's a publisher. Now the song gets big in the streets. So there are many things that tend to happen when something like that happens. What will normally happen is that someone in the music industry will pick up the song.
Truth.
So there are now people that are called distributors. What distributors do is that they approach you and say, how about we take over the distribution of this master right so that at least you can monetize. That's the trend, especially with Mapiano artists, that they're not going to the labels. They're going to distributors, because most of the Mapiano they actually own their own masters because they make them in their home studios. The stories that often occur is that they don't put in place the agreement of who owns what. So 2 years down the line, when the fame of the song has come and gone, someone is hungry somewhere and they own copyright, but it's not on paper.
Okay, sure.
All right, so I want to drill into the song part for now, because it all begins with the song, right?
Yeah.
So traditionally, about 3 years ago, like the average song, the average Hot 100 song had about 4 songwriters in that song. Currently, the average number of songwriters in the song is 6. Which then highlights the point that you just raised about music being a collaborative aspect, which then further highlights the need for people with the expertise to, one, get those 6 songwriters into the studio, develop a song that is really great for performing artists like Berita to sing. And in comes publishers. Munya Chanetz.
Welcome.
So take us through a brief timeline on what A&Ring is in the publishing space. And I know traditionally now publishers are playing more and more of a role in developing the sounds and developing the songwriters in order to create a good enough song before you can even record a good enough master. So take us through that process, and what is the purpose of a publisher, and when should somebody look to sign to a publisher?
Okay, super. So my name is Munya Chinetsa, as Wiseman shared. By day, I am the A&R manager for Sony ATV Music Publishing. By night, I call myself the man of the industry, the Moti, also known as. But we'll focus on my day for now. But so I'll start with what does a publisher do, because I feel because there's a lot of confusion because of the word publish already. That's the first thing, because publish means to make available. I mean, so a lot of the time, a lot of creatives think that because they've maybe found a distributor and they've made their song available, that they have a publisher. So that's often the first conversation I have with guys to really differentiate and just to show that publishing is not distribution.
Yes.
And distribution is not publishing. Even though the word does create, and we've actually spoken about, the name publishing should actually change to copyright management or something. Because we're in no way do we distribute or anything of the like. So that's the first thing. And then just to break down the three main roles of a publisher is, number one is to protect your works as a songwriter or a producer. So that means that no one can take your lyrics, no one can sample your melody, people can't take your beats without either one, getting your permission or compensating you for that. So our job is to make sure, so we're almost like your police basically, to make sure your compositions are protected and safe. The second role is to collect your royalties that are due to you. And Dumisani rightly shared earlier that there are two rights in music, and we deal with the rights in composition. So our job is to make sure that the producers, as well as the songwriters, they get their royalties that are due to them. A lot of people also, I know that when it comes to studio work, a lot of producers are unaware that they have these rights that belong to them actually once they create content, once they create music. A lot of guys think my job is I get my upfront fee of 5,000 Rand and you walk away. But in actual fact, unless it's been discussed, you still retain your rights. So it's very important. So our job is to make sure that the main rights I'm talking about are the mechanical royalties and the performance royalties. That we make sure that you as the producer or songwriter, you get your due so that you can further reinvest in your craft and get better. And then the third job, which is now my role as A&R. So A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire. And I mean, basically my job is to find A&R roles. A&R sits in different, on the label side as well as the publishing side. So now an A&R on the record label side, they're looking for more the performing artists. Their job is to find new performing artists who are doing the things vocally, they look good, etc., etc. On the publishing side now, where I sit, A&R is looking for the best songwriters and producers. And then not only am I looking to find you and to sign you to Sony, but my job is then, it's almost like a recruitment agent. Once you're signed to Sony as a songwriter or a producer, my job is to find you more work. So finding you more work could be in various different forms. It could be one, in collaborating with another artist. And on publishing, I also want to show that when I say collaborating on this side, it's not so much a song where it's going to be Munya featuring Berita. Now, what's going to happen is it's collaborating in the sense that you've written or you've produced a song for an artist. And I mean, you will get credit, but it won't be as a featuring artist like that. So number one is through collaboration, writing songs or producing songs for other artists. Number two is placement, which is also what we call sync or synchronization. And the definition of synchronization is basically putting music to moving pictures. So synchronizations usually happen when in advertisements. So when you've created a song, we'll find placement, maybe Ogilvy is looking for a brand, they need a song for their ad. Our job is to place our writers and our producers and songwriters' music in adverts. That also extends to series, movies, games now. So that's really, that's I guess in a nutshell, the role of a publisher.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, Buji, I want to come to you now as a new entrant into the music industry, right? We've given quite a varied viewpoint of the music industry from three different perspectives, right? But I want to get your viewpoint now. As somebody who's coming into the music industry, what are the most pressing issues that you are finding that make you go, what the hell's going on here?
To be honest, I'm learning so much. And to be, like, the worst thing is you thinking that you're just going to the studio, you do your music, and you don't understand that there's so many things that goes into it.
Business.
And having working with other people, I've seen that us as upcoming artists, we don't really pay attention to those things. We think it needs to be a song, put it out now, have a nice sleeve.
Let's hoy this.
Yeah, let's just go in. And then you sit back, the song is out, but nobody cares for it.
Yeah.
You know, you submit, and the worst part is like the rejection that you get from radio stations is overwhelming, because sometimes it's like, so I need to go and bribe and go and do things. I mean, I work for a national radio station, but I've never even heard my song. And then you ask yourself, what is it that one must do? Because it's not only talent, but there's also people that need to contribute in that. So that's one of the things that we're so pressing. Another thing with me, and Berita explained very well right now, I am obsessed with owning my masters. Maybe it's because I've been in the industry for a long time, and so many things. I've seen myself play on TV when I am so broke, and I'll be like, why am I not even getting paid for this? You know? And so with me, like, I'm obsessed with having, it's my song, it's I did this, only to find out, ang hambanga
No, that's true.
So, Berita, I want you to touch on the radio placement. So, she won't say it, so I'll say it. So Berita has had one of the biggest radio singles from last year, top 20 most played songs in the country. So as an independent musician, to achieve that feat, like what does it take, and how do you go about? What would you be your advice to someone like Bougie who wants to place their song on radio and get the high rotation?
Yes. I have to say the first and most important thing is to get the quality right. Because once again, remember, we are now in a digital era. It's now much easier to go into the studio yourself and pay for your own music. You know, it's much cheaper than it was 10 years ago when I first started. So because of that, you're finding that if you're going into a studio and you're a new artist, you're not getting the best engineer. Because the quality, you must understand that as much as I have one of the top 20 most played songs, if you look at South African radio, even international artists are in there.
Yeah.
So the quality of, the sonic quality of your work, beyond you just, you know, you need to write a good song. And going back actually to the writing, even before we get to the quality of the master, I started, especially Jiggy Zinto has, how many writers on it? 4. It's me, and it's my 4th album. And I've come to a point whereby I have my crew. I have 2 producers and 2 co-writers. So what we do is we find a space very, very far away from Joburg, and we book ourselves there for a week, and we work.
Budget.
And again, I'm getting owner, so I must invest. I must make sure that even before the good quality recording, the quality of the songs. You know, Munya is a publisher who finds writers. Just the quality of the songwriting needs to be on top.
Has to be.
That's the first thing. Once the quality of the writing is good, that's why you seldomly find a new artist that comes from nowhere and has a big hit. A lot of the times, artists that come and have big hits, it's either they've been working. You'll find even my piano artists, there's a reason why Maporisa and Kabza had to partner. Maporisa had the knowledge. He's been making hits for a very long time. He knows. Kabza has got a new sound, but he doesn't have the knowledge of, you know. So the importance when you're a new artist to surround yourself with more experienced people, either working with an experienced record label, experienced manager, you know, having that experience is very important. Otherwise, you can chance it the first time round, but you're not going to be able to sustain it because it's you have to work hard at it. So good quality songwriting, composition, even if it means writing with someone else. I know my strength. I'm very good when it comes to melody. At least I play an instrument, but Xhosa is my 3rd language. I'm known for writing songs in Xhosa. I have a Xhosa co-writer who is an SABC news reader.
Yeah.
So when you hear a song from me in Xhosa, the Xhosa has been checked.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just,
From the heart.
you know,
Yeah.
even a song like Ngcela Kiss where the chorus, baby Ngcela Kiss, you know, but makungena kwi-verse is a mastanda nesibhuqane kuqhumuthuli. Can you hear that? Kunesixhosa, like
Yeah.
it's rich.
Yeah.
So that's very important for young artists to understand that to get your copyright, whether it's composition or master, to a high standard. That's the most important thing. Then record well.
Yeah.
Once you have done that, mixing and mastering.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you hear, I once went to Mthatha for a gig. A young girl came to me and said, Beretta, can you please listen to my CD? I had time. And luckily, I was actually with one of my co-writers. So we went and sat in the car. It was a 10-track. We went through every song. Like,
1 to
we
10.
went to track number 4. We're like, this song is so good. But the mixing and the mastering, we're like, the quality of the songwriting, this song I can hear in the top 20 on radio.
Yeah.
And by the way, when it comes to radio, you must understand that radio is like going to it's like going to KFC. The chicken always has to be good. It can't. I'm using that as an example. It's like when you go to a chicken place in the hood, sometimes you get a good chicken, sometimes you don't. So most of the songs, yes, sometimes there's a song that's on radio and you don't understand. I can't speak for that. But I can speak to say that at a Billboard level, every song that's there, you listen to the songwriting, you listen to the production,
Mixing and
the
mastering.
mixing, the mastering. Those are the 4 most important things. As a young artist, if you're in a position where maybe your family wants to invest in your music, sometimes we're now in a situation whereby a mother and a father will see their child as talent. They also don't want their child to be taken advantage of in the industry. So they've got 10, 15, 20,000 rand to give them. Is to say the quality first. Once you have the quality, then now it's the job of marketing. It's the job of, there's different departments, different types. If you want your song to be on radio a lot, it means you want to earn, you want it to be well monetized there. Then there's people called radio pluggers that build relationships in radio. Find one that doesn't pay money, because once you start paying money, you'll always be paying money. But if you always have good quality music, I've come to a point on radio where when I send my music, which by the way, I sample my own radio, because I've built those relationships
Levels. My levels.
over a long period of time.
Yes. Yes.
So I've come to a point where when I call, I still struggle, because I have to call. It's a job on its own. That pluggers, radio pluggers, are people that are in charge of calling. Basically, what they do is they pitch to radio. They call Metro FM, the compiler there. There's someone who is in charge of listening to music all day long and saying, this one fits in the morning, this one fits in the afternoon, this one fits in the evening. So
I used to do that job.
I used to do that job. So those people know their quality. They know what, and also, by the way, a station like Metro FM has advertisers. So if this person doesn't put the right programming of the music,
You lose
the
ears.
advertisers are going to pull out.
Yeah.
You know? So you have to realize that it's not just about Berry. I've had songs turned down for me to up my qualities, because some of my songs were turned down. So now I have to go back to the drawing board and say, let me get the quality up. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
So Tumzan, let me bring you in here. What are some of the common errors that you've come across that, let's just say, the independent musician has created a hit? Let's stick with the theme, La Kokoti Piano,
Yeah.
and the song is great.
That's a hit.
Like, so what are the common errors that you find that musicians or up and coming musicians are making that down the line causes problems, and then they have to find themselves at your doorstep?
At my doorstep, yeah. I think Beretta has covered them very well. The first thing is not knowing, not understanding the whole idea of copyright. And that's why big up to the organizers of this thing, because that's where it starts. You need to understand that even though you are passionate about music, but this is a copyright. Now, you see, I'm a lawyer, so I'll break down copyright. Copyright is just like owning a house. It's property.
Assets.
It's an asset. It's something that it's
Actually, can I hold you there?
yeah.
There is actually a year where I took my earnings
Yeah.
from a music copyright
Yeah.
and I deposited a property.
Eesh.
So that is to
are
say I
inspirational.
really understand. That's the first time that I understood that actually it's the same thing. You know why?
Yeah.
My tenant pays me rent every month. But also because we're in the digital era
Yeah.
and now, music,
Yeah. Yeah.
my music also pays me rent.
Yeah.
So it's a similar
No,
thing.
actually, I'm happy you chipped in there because once creators wise understand
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
they understand that it's music is not just about the passion; it's the livelihood. So the livelihood comes from the fact that it's a copyright. Because if you look at a copyright like you look at someone that owns a bottle store as a source of livelihood, then you will understand.
Correct.
So what tends to happen, and Perita summed it up very well, when they go to the studio, number one, the first mistake they do, they don't understand that they are going to work, they are going to create a copyright, they are going to be party to a process of creating a copyright. If they can get that right, they will stop this thing of going to a studio and just.
Yeah.
You know the things that happen in the creation of the songs today will shock you. The greatest of songs
Yeah.
that you hear on radio, the way they were made in the most of careless of fashion. but creators will also tell you, and that's where I want Perita to explain this thing for me. Creators by their very nature will always tell you, don't disturb me when I'm in the space and the mood of creating. Bogging me with legalities and talk to me about splits and all that.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, Perita, I understand them. You know why? Because the time they're busy creating the song, and you see this one, like, uyayizwa mara akayizwa.
Yeah.
Mina as a lawyer sengifikile sengiyadansa, I've arrived, this is it. And then he said, wait right there. If you can shoot that from the C sharp and just make it flat, and they do that, and wow. Now sebajabulene bavuleli harness bashana ngama take 5. No one cares about saying, yeah man, for me contributing that, I want to be
My
part of the
percentage.
composition.
And also another
percentage.
thing there, not to cut you, is that it's really difficult as an artist. It's taken me a long time, to be able to how to be comfortable. Being
Having
a
that
creative
conversation,
and having that conversation.
Yes, I hear you.
I've come to a point where people that work with me, especially my team, they know. I remember the last time we were in studio, they're like, we don't worry when we work with you. Because you're not the kind of artist who next time when you're not going to say, when I'm going to 3%.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand, I've started to make documentaries of when I make music.
Yeah.
Why? Because we can sit in a room like this.
Yes.
I will have the guitar, I'll have the whole song. And he will just start singing something that ends up inspiring the song to go to a new level.
Yeah.
So, and now when you have to discuss who did what, we've forgotten.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And they even say that in America, even if you change the hi-hat, even if you change the drum, like that's a composition. So what we now try and do, of course, there's room for opportunists. There's room for someone to come at. But what we now try and do, especially if you're working I found with piano artists, it's a crew. It's people that work together all the time.
All the time.
You find that, for example, I use again Maporisa and Kapsa because they are well known. I'm sure how many songs have those guys made together that we know about? How many?
We know about.
That we know. So these are people that sit maybe in one day and make 10 songs.
That's life.
Back to back. So you end up forgetting who said what, who did what melody.
True.
So what's better sometimes that I advise for young people, if you're now working with Bougie all the time, just have an agreement that says, you know what, Bougie, whenever we work together, let's share this 50-50.
Yes.
That way,
Simple.
Yeah.
There's
it's
no
simple.
arguments.
Yeah.
It's sometimes what people do is they will say, okay, fine, the beat, the musical part is 50%. The lyrics and the melody is another 50%. That's sometimes how people do it. But I find that sometimes if we're working together, sometimes sometimes even a producer who's not even writing the song comes up with a lyric.
Yes.
You know?
True.
So I think what helps in the studio, especially as creatives, is that first of all, get amongst people you trust.
Yes.
I once saw, I think it was Usimi was talking about how she started working with Sunny L. She's like, you know, when you start, don't go for bigger producers that have a bigger name than you. When she started with Sunny L, they started together. So they built that trust, that relationship. And obviously, I don't know how they do their things in terms of composition, but I find that sometimes what young artists, especially vocalists, female vocalists, the challenge they face in terms of copyright is that DJ Wiseman, famous, big, calls me, sees me singing on Instagram. Ngiyacula, ngicula kamnandi. Angibizi.
See your name in lights.
And makangibiza ngisedurban.
Yeah.
Angithumele 300 e-wallet, get on the bus tonight.
Yes.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm going to get on the bus.
Yes.
And by the morning angithi usayipostile ne video yami ngidlala la ku Instagram. Ekseni uyangiposta ngikwi live. Ngicule studio. Ama fans, all his fans and my fans, everyone, who's this? Excitement. Then what happens? The DJ knows that, and by the way, DJs are very popular because DJs play music that is a higher tempo, so they have a higher chance of getting played on the radio and being streamed. So they know a hit. They know that this song is going to be big. So what are they going to do? Because they know, they will either not discuss the splits, they won't talk about them. Or they will say, no, I'll buy you out of the song. I'll give you 10, 15. It's a lot of money at that time.
At that time.
You know. So what I've seen young women, I'm going to speak on women because I'm a woman, is that sometimes women's careers don't take off because of that one mistake that happened with a DJ in studio. Because now what happens is a song becomes big, makes the money, but I'm credited. It's DJ Wiseman featuring Berita. But I don't know anything about splits or publishing.
Royalties.
So what happens? According to Samro, who pays money for the performance rights on radio,
100%.
they only go on about what's on paper. They don't have time to go through all the songs. If on paper it says DJ Wiseman, 50%, Munya, 50%, even though Munya was not even in studio. Sometimes DJs do that. Even he wasn't even in studio on that day.
It's true.
I'm calling them out right now, right here, because you know what happens is that the song becomes big. The DJ, by the way, is gonna monetize. He owns the master because it was in his studio. So now he owns at least a significant part of the composition. The female artist has gained a bit of fans on social media. The song becomes big. The DJ is getting booked for gigs. He doesn't even call the artist. Or when he calls the artist, he only calls when there's no money.
For free ones.
For the free gigs. 2 years down the line, or not even 2 years down the line, a year later, it's a new year, it's a new December. The DJ has another hit. He has moved on. The female artist is now trying to recollect.
Yes, true.
Fans are asking, when is the next music coming out?
She's back home now.
She's back home. She's getting on a taxi. Bayambuza ukuthi how manje famous kangaka. How ngihleli nawe la. How?
It's a sad real story.
You know? So I cannot understand the importance. I would even say, if you're a young female artist or an artist and you're not comfortable, you know, find someone like Uputumsan.
Mara Uputumsan bayadura.
No, ngaphandle kokudula, real Perita, thank you so much. I really appreciate you articulating that, that issue of that challenge of the split. So it's the main challenge wise that you find in the fact that they don't get the split right. And I'm very happy the way Berita is breaking it down because actually she's answering my own questions. I ask myself, Munya does copyright management. He will tell you how frustrated he gets when someone says, here are my albums. Then Munya said, okay, it's fine. We need to notify them with Kapaso and Samro. Give me splits. What are you talking about?
What a split.
He doesn't know. He now must go back and say, hey man, we're in the studio, we did the song, what's my percentage? Now they're having a discussion they should have had in the studio. They're having it because Munya has signed him in to now give splits. And I think Perita has outlined for us really where the challenge becomes. And I want to in over the years of me doing this thing of legal advisor in the entertainment space, I used to be angry. Why don't you do this? You need to do this. And then I understood that at times it's not as easy.
No.
Take the example of the girl Perita is giving us an example. What's behind her mind is fame. She needs to appear on TV. She needs, this is DJ XXX, who is huge. The mere fact that in Nigeria, Insta alone, girl, has arrived. So when we are calling entertainment lawyer, also an split, so that we get things right, I
now
might
you
just
feel like
miss
singing
this opportunity.
Kosha.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'm like singing Kosha.
I always make this story. I know we're talking music. I always say in my law firm, I specialize in advising both artists and actors. But the only one actor I ever advised on his contract for acting, as soon as I've advised and he went back to the producers, he was written out of the script.
He was fired.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I felt bad. I really felt bad.
No, you do get fired.
I'm not an actor or an actress, but my understanding is that the copyright does not exist in that part of town.
Not at all.
Yeah, so
That's another.
so what actors have from a legalistic sense is what you call neighboring rights, right?
Yeah.
So it's not copyright, but it's a right that is adjacent to copyright. So in the same sense that performers have a neighboring right, so your session musicians will have a right to earn every time a recording in which they've performed in is broadcast to the public or communicated to the public in one way.
Yeah.
They do that through a collecting society called SAMPRA.
Yeah.
Actors in other jurisdictions, not here, have that says whenever where you've lent your talent to the creation of this copyright, because you don't own the copyright, but you've lent your talent to the creation of that copyright, you then have the ability to earn. And in South Africa, it's fragmented because some of them have them via their own negotiation, via their own contracts. Some get paid their repeat fees without a problem. Others don't because it's not a statutory law as yet. So what really needs to happen is it needs to, one, be a statutory law in as far as changing the current laws of the country. And then there needs to be a audiovisual performers collecting society. Or you expand the mandate of SAMPRA.
Yes.
And it becomes a holistic performers
a good
thing.
idea.
Because then it looks
SAMPRA.
at producers and it looks at the performers within that production. So it would essentially be, in the audiovisual space, the producers are the broadcasters or whoever the commissioning agent is. And in the recording space, it's the record labels. And then the performers are all the lead actors, and in some jurisdictions, even the people who write, the people who write the original soundtrack. You're seen as as an author of that audiovisual work in some jurisdictions. So that's what needs to happen, and then you expand the operations of SAMPRA, and then all the actors become members of SAMPRA. So you, in actual fact, will have like 4 chambers. Right now, SAMPRA has 2 chambers. So you'd have 4 chambers, and then they will then license broadcasters again on behalf of these actors.
Good idea.
Where does that happen? Where does that happen?
So there's 2 things, and this is the advocacy part of me talking. There's 2 things, right? So we've had this Copyright Act, or the copyright law that we have in this country, that has needed to be changed since 1940. Like the law was passed in 1978, only last amended in 2002 to make space for needle time for the musicians, right? So there's a whole lot of holes that the law has that need to be plugged. So this was an opportunity to plug those holes. But what happened is the DTI basically messed up the process.
Okay.
Which then frustrates audiovisual performers, because what they've also done is bundle this particular thing, which is very easily separated from the copyright space, in with the Copyright Amendment Bill. So they've effectively messed up the copyright bill, and then taken what would be a change in the actors' livelihoods and bundled it into this copyright amendment bill. Now, the problems that are are seen in the Copyright Amendment Bill now affect the audiovisual performers. Now they can't pass this element because they need to fix the issues with the Copyright Amendment Bill, all because the DTI, when one, didn't take enough advice, and two, just felt like they wanted to do whatever they wanted to do without actually listening to the copious amounts of advice we've given.
So I feel like, honestly, as an entertainer in this country, we are not taken seriously, especially by our government. And I feel like it's going to take us a while for us to get to that level whereby we are fully protected, because one of the reasons why we're also sitting here, we are not completely protected. You start your you are so creative, you put your heart and soul into something, but then you've been told about DTI. You know, it's just like, but don't you, this is like work for me. Like you said, going to studio is work. But we like anytime, even the contracts that we sign, they say to you, they can call you anytime and cancel that contract and say, actually, thank you for your services. We're now going for Perita. It doesn't say, listen, can we keep you a standard fee? 5 years with us, and then we'll see how it goes. And then with no reason, no, today we feel like Munya is going to do the best job. Thank you so much. You know, so it's one of the things that really frustrates me to say, how do we get this to be fixed?
So in one of the main ways or the main problems we have in the country is lack of organizational groupings, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
And whenever also in the creative space, whenever in this country we think about organizational groupings, we think unions, because that's our history, right? Like this country is brick and mortar, unions, or in the mines, whatever, right? And what makes unions function in other industries doesn't exist in the creative space, i.e. the ability to deduct, once you're representative in any one employer, the ability to deduct subscription fees from the salary of your member without them even seeing it, and then going to go work behind the scenes, doesn't exist. Like, as you are saying, you'll get, we'll call you when we need you type of contract, right? It's an ad hoc contract, and you get paid ad hocly. Then what's going to sustain a union for that? So there needs to be a recalibrating of the understanding of what an organizational grouping is when you speak about the creative industry. And this is where things like guilds become a huge opportunity, right? So instead of unions, you need guilds and associations. What guilds will do is say, we'll go into an SABC. Once we are representative of enough actors, we'll sit and say, in this country, SABC, multi-choice, or anyone, if you're going to engage an actor, this is the floor. For somebody with 5 years above, who we would call a mid-experienced performer in the audiovisual space. 10 years plus, we'll say, is an experienced performer in the audiovisual space. Extras, new entrants, they then set floors for payment. And they enter into arrangements with the broadcasters. That's it. You undertake never to pay any entrance into this market or anyone that we represent below this floor. You can pay them higher, but not below this floor. And then they enter into those agreements with those broadcasters, and what that does, it then protects an entrance. You now have a very clear understanding of what the call-out fee for a new entrant into the market is if you're below 5 years, unless you're a superstar talent, in which case you can command whatever you want with your agent. Similarly, when it comes to musicians, you need associations, right, that have the ability to then say, you are a composer. Go sit with other composers. What are the problems plaguing composers in the industry? Okay, these are the issues. Maybe the collecting societies need to change the way they operate. Instead of you going to go speak to collecting societies as an individual member, the association says, we have 20 members who've dealt with this problem, so it's systematic. These are the suggestions that you need to implement in the organization to fix that. Similarly, as a composer, you go to the record labels and you say, we're sick and tired of your DJs taking advantage of the composers in our midst, particularly women composers who come looking to plow their trade and get exposed to misogyny, all these other things that plague composers. And these are the basics, flaws that you are agreeing to engage our composers with. And that way you then get the functionalities of leaving your ability to demand whatever you want. Because the other issues with unions is, if you want to put it in the audiovisual space, then the really big actors cannot break out of the mold. And also we don't want to over-regulate the creative industry, because it's one of the few industries where if you have talent, today you could be in a 4-room house in the township somewhere. Next month, you could literally have the biggest song in the country, and that way change your livelihood. And that all comes from not having too many regulatory impediments. Like if you wanted to, if you have money now to buy a taxi, you can't just have a taxi operating tomorrow because of too many barriers of entry. And it creates de facto monopolies where one family might own 20 taxis in one particular route, whereas the creative industry doesn't have that issue. Like if you were unlucky enough never to have the ability to go to acting school but have the talent, you could literally nurture that talent and find yourself being the biggest actor in the world. Similarly, as a musician, if you never had the ability, like the majority of the musicians we love might have never had actual formal instruction in music. And once you formalize these things and you say you must have a degree, what you're doing really is you're creating a status quo that exists in other industries that doesn't exist in the creative industry. And that can't really happen. So you need to create other things. You need to think differently when you think about the creative industry and the creative spaces as to how you then create these collectives and create that protection.
Stop people being paid with bottles of
vodka.
Exposure. Yes, bottles.
Before we run away with this thing, I want you to close on this issue. So musicians, particularly on the composer side, and publishers work with collecting societies, and they work with splits. I want you to break down the collecting society space in the country, and what benefit is there that publishers actually give composers vis-a-vis the collecting societies.
So, I mean, it's been shared that there's different players in the industry and the space, and everyone has a role to play, and it's very important that that we feed the correct people the correct things so that everything can work as an ecosystem. Because right now we're finding issues where, due to lack of understanding, certain elements are overlooked or people don't know and the like. So Sony ATV is a member of the collection management organizations here in South Africa. And so a CMO, collection management organization, the ones we have in SA here are Capasso, Samro, Sampra, Echo, Risa.
Risa and Impra.
And Impra.
Yeah.
And Impra, exactly. And I guess the core function of a CMO is to collect and distribute royalties. That's the core function of a CMO. And I guess the reality is that sometimes there's a lot of confusion. So as I enter the publishing space, a lot of people would be like, even outside of saying distributors are publishers, a lot of people will be saying to me, I'm signed to Samro, they're my publisher. I'm signed to Capasso, they're my publisher, so I don't need to sign with you. Because of that core function, which is to collect and distribute royalties, which technically, as I mentioned earlier, as a publisher, our role is to collect and also distribute royalties. However, we collect from the CMOs. That's one. So it's almost like, no, it's almost like. The fact is, that's how that link works. However, outside of that, and why a publisher is different is because we do provide all these other, there are other services that we provide. So as I mentioned, in terms of sync and placement and all this stuff, so there's all these other elements. So that's the core differentiator. However, and it's just important that everyone plays their role, to be honest.
So I want you to also touch on metadata management aspects of the publishing, because we've spoken about splits and how generally it's very difficult to bring it up during the creative process. So in reality, most of it happens at the publisher's instance once the song is actually out there somewhere.
True.
So what's the process once the song is out and the split wasn't agreed, and now you've signed Berita, who has a really hot song?
Okay, so let's just use that as an example. So Berita is a great song, and we're trying to now figure out. So it hinders the work that we can do if we don't have the publishing splits, and there's massive losses when it comes to metadata. So let me also explain. Metadata is song information, which you already possess as the writer. I think the main thing, people hear metadata and it sounds like it's something big and grand, but the truth is, metadata is literally just putting the information that you already have about the song, just putting it down on paper so that it's clear. So metadata is literally the song name, who's the composer, who's the publisher, the ISRC code, that's a whole nother conversation. The duration of the song, etc. And this is all information that we already have. We just need to learn to put it on paper, because what's happening is now the CMOs, they're unable to collect if the metadata is incorrect.
Yep.
And that's where the problem comes, because now that if the metadata is incorrect, Munir doesn't put his name there. Now the CMOs don't know who to distribute these royalties to that they're collecting. And that's what stems a huge problem, especially on our continent. I believe, I think there's millions of money just floating, which is just uncollected. And the CMOs have it called undocumented, and then it falls into undocumented. And I know the CMOs, because I've worked with Reisman when I was at Capasso. The CMOs also, they do work to try and find who are the composers, who are the writers, and that's a task on its own. And then also, I guess, on my side, well, it's good to have the the list, the undocumented, because then I'll be able to see who's doing things. In case maybe Berita pops up on undocumented and I'll see she has a big song, that will kind of lead me to say, okay, I need to speak to Berita. I need to find her, see if she has a publisher. If she doesn't, then I can make a deal and we move on like that. But it's just, I think it's just the admin. And when I say admin, it's the business side of the industry, which is just lacking. And I know that we've mentioned that sometimes it's difficult for creatives when you're in that creative space to pull yourself out and now start thinking, okay, business mind. It's tough. So I know I'm trying to encourage, and I mentioned it earlier saying that I'm the moti and stuff, but the reality of the situation is I'm trying to also groom business-minded people in this industry so that if the creative doesn't want to do it, or not that they don't want to do it, they just don't have the capacity right now, I say there should be someone in the room at least who should be able to kind of talk the business talk. If the creators are having too much, at least someone in the room who's like, okay, I'm not here for joy, as in obviously you're enjoying the music, but you know that you're there for business, and once everyone is done, you can just say, guys, quickly splits. What do we decided? So that, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to encourage.
Before or after the Hennessy?
They aren't allowed to drink Hennessy. But it's so important.
Thank you very much, man. I think we'll wrap it up. Tumsani, last remarks, then we'll come to you,
Yeah.
Buji,
Look.
then Munya, and then Berita, you can close.
Interesting. I think, as I said, really, we are thankful for the organizers of this event. I've learned a lot myself with my co-panelists here. Berita, you should speak more, hey?
You should.
I think Berita should speak more because
experience.
There's a lot of new talent that goes to waste.
Yeah.
By not knowing a lot of the intricate details and happenings of the industry. And I think really in wrapping up, Wiseman, two things. Number one, copyright is very important. When I started by introducing myself, I mentioned that I'm an entertainment lawyer and I do legal advisory within the entertainment space. A large chunk of the work that I do involves what we call copyright disputes so far as song ownership. Umuntu ahambe nje e-studio yenza ingoma yomuntu. I release the food.
How?
Aphinda sibize ngokuthi yakhe. You know, it's one thing to go and do someone's song, but to then tell collecting societies is your song. Trust me, it happens.
Oh, yeah. It happens.
And I work a lot with gospel artists. I must be careful what I say. They're my clients. But, in the gospel space, there's this thing called public domain. So there's a song that it's in the public domain. And
Amahubo
so,
kahle kahle.
yeah, makulo sakhula sifila, we grew up singing. People become lazy to research. A person just goes and say, man, this song should be public domain, man. Umuntu wayibhala wafa. Ubuze bani? So those are the main challenges that that are there, which then say to me more advocacy needs to be done within the space. Number one. Number two, a couple of weeks back, SAMRO, which is one of the collecting societies, actually issued a notice to all its members. And they said in September this year, they will start treating UNDOC within the laws of prescription. So what that says is that if you have written a song and you have not claimed it, after September, all along they were giving you 5 years to claim it. After September, they'll give you only 3 years.
Yep.
And after that 3 years, if you still don't claim it, you will forfeit whatever income you will have made out of that song. I think for me, that's a bomb for creators in this country. In fact, creators should be running helter-skelter and looking for any other studio they ever worked in 100%. To try and say, I need to notify, because really, I can imagine, as Munya correctly said, there is millions that is sitting with collecting societies for UNDOCs, and collecting societies try their best to find you, but it's not their job to find you. Your job is to give correct metadata so that they can match the song to you. So I'm saying that thing that Samro announced, actually for me, if someone was not taking copyright serious, he should now start taking it serious.
Thank you for bringing that up, man.
Yeah.
Buji, closing remarks?
I am overwhelmed. I've learned so much. Thank you so much, guys. I don't want to lie. Like, you've changed. I think when I call my sister now, I won't go to the streets, be like, yo, you're in business now. Because those are some of the things that I was taking lightly. And also just learning that, being a full artist and also owning intellectual your intellectual property is that it's not an influencer job. It's not, because sometimes people think that entertainment is just an influencer thing, and I'm just like, no, it's a full-time job. So I'm highly inspired. I'm blown away. Thank you.
Munya?
Yes. Again, thank you to the organizers of this. This has been great. I think for me, what it boils down to, well, I wear two hats, but I mean, with the Sony hat, we're always looking for songwriters and producers. So please, you can hit us up on our social medias at any point, and there's an email if you want to submit any demos, potentially for consideration. Then with my other hat, which is my multi hat, I like to
the one you're wearing right now.
The one I'm wearing literally right now. I'd like to really encourage people to really, encourage we need a new set of people within the industry who are business-minded now. The creatives are there, we've got them in plenitude.
Yeah.
I think now we need a set of people who are comfortable not being in the spotlight, but being part of the industry where they are behind the scenes and they're just making sure the business is being put in, the admin is being done properly. So, I really want to encourage people to really start looking at that. And very soon I'll be looking at launching a website, an informative website that will just give basic understanding of the ABCs of the industry, what we've discussed today, things like that. I'm looking at launching that just to try and help, just to do something. So yeah, but thank you.
Yes, madam.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much to Gauteng Province Sports, Arts and Culture.
And recreation.
And recreation for having us. This is a very, very important
it is.
conversation. For me, it's actually 9 years that I've been in the music industry. When I started,
decade next year.
when I put
And
out my
outside
first
will be
album,
open.
I was second year student at varsity, and I had the passion was burning inside me. It's 9 years later now. I've released 4 albums. I'm preparing my EP.
Nice.
That's coming up. But outside of my own music and continuously learning, because learning doesn't stop.
Yep.
Never.
I'm also in the process of incorporating an NGO called The WOM, the Women of the Music Business. Because I think it's about time.
That's a nice acronym.
It is perfect, actually.
We must make sure we copyright.
Trademark.
Trademark that name.
So what we do at the
that's
WOM
power.
is that we really want to create
Women of music
opportunities. We want women to engage. We want women to have networks. I don't know if you know, but like a research was done last year, just they took, you spoke about the Billboard top 100. They took about 500 of the top songs in the world. And when they looked at those songs, they realized that only 21% of those songs were sang by women. So just as artists, it means that women artists that are getting, frontline spotlight and monetization, only 20%. When it comes to songwriters, 12.5%. Only 12.5% of the top 500 songs in the world were written by women. When it comes to production, 2.6%.
Hey, guys.
So it's dwindling. So what we are going to do at the Women of the Music Business, we started last year. We partnered with Wits Business School, and we offered a business course, a 2-day masterclass for 30 women across the continent. We received over 200 applications. We were only sponsored for 30. So now that I'm incorporating it into an NGO, we're looking at doing work over the next at least 10 years. The goal is that at least by 2030, we want at least a gender disparity of 50%. Not just in the PR departments where we see women. No.
Marketing.
No. We want women in the executive seats. We want them in the boards. Board Yagwa Sampra, board Yagwa Kapaso, Sony board.
It's true.
SABC. We want women. We want women engineers. We want women producers. We want women to really get their hands dirty, because I think money is there in the creative industry. And as people are looking at Africa, we need to lead.
Amen.
Thank you very much, madam. And that sounds like a really, really great initiative. If you ever need anybody to facilitate, bring me. I'll dedicate at least 2 hours a month. That's what, 24 hours a year.
I'll definitely give you a call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's a really great initiative. Because it is a serious problem. As somebody who has tried to develop talent within the music industry space, like numerically, when you look at the macro data, there's a lot of women in the industry, but they have a very low ceiling. There's a very low ceiling, and it's very specific types of jobs. As you said, it might be in PR, but once you start hitting middle management to executive level, they disappear. So it's a serious, serious problem. And the lack of, if you're looking at a futuristic company, it needs to be fully representative.
Correct.
Like doing good is good business. So if the entertainment industry is worse off for not having those discussions. That's when you then have content that goes out there that is blind to certain issues, because there wasn't a woman in there to say, wait a minute, that's completely silly. You can't put that content out there because it perpetuates X, Y, and Z. Because we all have our own blinkers. So those things are really,
we're
really
all
crucial.
ignorant.
It's really, really crucial that we have proper representation across the board if we are to move to the levels that we need to move into. In closing, I think the last remark is Capaso is a collective management organization that works primarily in the production royalties, but most importantly in the digital space. There is quite a lot of metadata that is missing from musicians who release music on a daily basis and have that music be streamed on YouTube, Apple Music, and multiple other platforms that does not have the correct metadata. Without metadata, no one can get paid. And that is a huge problem. So please ensure you fix that metadata. The office is already geared up to take as much information as you possibly can give, and please make sure you do that, and please make sure you download all the tools that have been availed so that people can get proper knowledge and understanding of how to make sure they claim what's due to them. Thank you very much to the Gauteng Sports, Arts and Culture and Recreation, and I think KS, what is it? KS Music Agency, I think, for hosting us.
Thank you.